Hello, Negotiations and Sales class, HTE 4730. This is your professor, Dr. Cynthia Vanucci, sharing with you guided notes. Guided notes are really important to me because they assist you in preparing for your quizzes. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with Chapter 1, Defining Negotiations and its Components. First of all, you should know that all human interaction is negotiation. You'll find this on page 2. So in your notes defining negotiation, we would say that it's the process of interacting with the goal of obtaining an agreement or the result that you desire. I'm sure many of you have negotiated with friends, colleagues, parents, and siblings. Not always turned out the way you wanted, but believe it or not, you are interacting with the idea to get the result that you want. Okay, continuing on with guided notes, not everything is negotiable, found on page 4. If there is a potential for a first blank answer you're going to fill in your guided note sheet, it would be mutually beneficial and an exchange that leaves the parties better off than not in negotiation, that the matter should be, it leaves you better off all in the long run. And most people will avoid negotiations, but our ideal here is to be mutually beneficial and an exchange of information. Okay, continuing on with Chapter 1, Components of Negotiation Performance, found on page 6 of your textbook. We're going to go to number 3. Our human interaction is affected by who we are and with whom we interact. We're going to go here. The components of negotiation performance include, please take out your guided notes once again and let's fill in these blanks. It's your personality. Some of us have an abrasive personality and are unable to actually negotiate with others. Some of us have a lousy approach. Of course, some of us have a style and a temperament that makes it easy to negotiate. We're very approachable, or the perception is that we're approachable. Of course, we have to have interests that we both want to be able to negotiate to that point. We have goals in mind and, of course, needs. Let's not forget there are values here. And finally, powers. Sometimes we don't negotiate from a position of power. We're not always conscious about these attributes. We're not always conscious about these attributes in negotiations. Okay, a plan to develop your effective and personalized negotiation strategies. There's 15 steps. This is found on page 7. If you're ready, I'm ready. Number 1, this is a tough one, but sometimes we have to back away from who we are. We need to use critical thinking, and we need to be empathetic to the people that we're working with. Number 2, study and understand key principles from psychological and sociological communication and conflict theories. All right, what is this really saying to you? What it's saying is there are certain key aspects that you must have when you negotiate. You don't walk in with attitude. You don't walk in or have people, let's say, walk to your office because sociologically that you have the power. We always want to be able to communicate and not from, sometimes I have this problem, I come out with this stance that it's my way or no way, but that doesn't create the two-way communication. And of course, there's several conflict theories that are out there. I think theories are wonderful, and of course, being an academic, I'm all about those theories, but you must keep this, you have to have like this low-key way of communicating when you want to negotiate. Know yourself. Well, I was kind of just talking about that. I know that I have a tendency to come in very strong, and what happens when I come in really strong, people just don't feel like they have a negotiating edge. I mean, think about it from the standpoint of you're a student and you have your professor. You think that they have all the power. Well, if you know yourself and you know what your grade is and you know how you studied something, you should be able to negotiate with that professor on how best to reach a point, a mutual point that is both agreeable. I'm going to take a sip of water because I'm a little parched here. Hang on one second. Nothing like it. A little bottled water. Again, we're going to continue with our points of developing your effective personalized negotiation strategy. Understand the dynamics of conflict. What is that saying to you? There are certain conflicts that are very heated. I don't know about some of you, but we've been, we have the red state, blue states going on. You have to understand the dynamics of that it's more important for dialogue at that point between parties than it is to try to conjure up the conflict. Because when you have a democracy, let's say, and you've got a government that's got to be transparent and we have to vote on things, well, sometimes that's, you don't get your way in the voting process. That creates a real dynamic of conflict. The know your major negotiation styles and temperaments and how to interact with each of them. One of my major negotiation styles is I always am one of those people who want, this is me personally, like I said, I always want to meet halfway. I recognize that, like if you're negotiating for a salary, I know I may want $50,000 a year. And let's say that they're offering me $42,000 or $40,000 a year. Both parties need to save face. You need to feel like you've got to ask for more money, but if you want to ask for your maximum amount, that might be beyond what they can do. A negotiating style for me is always that, can you meet me halfway? Can you meet me halfway? Then nobody feels like they lose face. That's just one of my negotiating styles. And it's a temperament for me because I don't like to have major conflict. I don't mind a little bit of conflict. As an older woman, I've gotten used to the conflict, but when you're younger, a lot of people do not want to have the confrontations. Number 6, you communicate effectively by allowing for differing perceptions. You have to know that you have your own personal biases and prejudices. In my own office, people know how I negotiate and how I speak. And so there is already some biases that I may monopolize a conversation. And so it really has to make the perception of me is, oh, if I don't blurt that word in now, Venucci will just keep talking. Well, to communicate effectively, you have to really understand where you need to make your own natural pauses. And this is, believe it or not, even at my age, this is something that I continue to learn and try to get better at. Once again, we're going to continue with those 15 steps. We're now at number 7 as you take your notes. Acknowledge cultural and contextual expectations. Culturally, in my family, we're all going to argue for our point. But in a work environment, the culture will be one that we want to encourage dialogue. So there's a different kind, you just have to acknowledge that different places or different places within family or within companies, you have to be aware of those dynamics. And there's cultures within your company, just like there is a culture within your family. Number 8, the dynamics of power. I spoke about that earlier. Sometimes students think that professors have all the power, when in fact it's not about power. And I think that when a student wants to come and negotiate with me about a graded paper, I always say, just bring me the backup. It's you own your class, you own your grade, and there isn't a dynamics of power here unless you come in and just mandate that the teacher give you an A, which, well, then of course dynamics of power are going to have a strong play. Let's talk about interests and goals. When I talk about a student who comes to me and wants to negotiate a letter grade, let's say, on a particular homework assignment, I would say, look, let's identify the interests. You want the credits. I want you to do well. These are both goals that we have. Doing well in my class would mean doing the homework, right? But maybe we had a disagreement in how I might have graded something. I need to understand where you are and why you want me to do that. That's the way I understand your interests, which moves me to your goal. Of course, we're back with these 15. Is there a difference between being assertive and being aggressive? Most definitely. We do want you to be assertive, especially as a student with a professor. We want you to be in charge of your grade. We want you to be in charge of your points. And so being assertive says, listen, I want my homework back at a certain time without threatening people. That's really important. The professor doesn't want to have to be a person of power in a place when we're transferring of knowledge, but we do expect you to be assertive and own your own grade, understand where your points come from, follow what your work is. Then you have a better place by which to be assertive. Be persuasive. Oh my goodness. As a teacher, I use my power of persuasion all the time. because I'm trying to get people on board to buy a concept or idea. Sometimes that concept or idea is studying. Sometimes that concept or idea is owning the points in your grade. Sometimes that idea, that concept would be to try to draw a student out to uncover information in the class that will make he or she much better as a student and maybe even drive the interest level in the topic, I should say. Okay, be thoroughly prepared and avoid common mistakes. We've been talking about the professor-student relationship in the world of negotiation strategies. Whenever a student wants to come in and talk with me about a grade or points that could be missing, first of all, I never approach it adversarially, and I would hope that the student doesn't approach it with adversary in mind. The idea is you come with your quizzes or your assignments, you come with your portion from the chapter of where they thought they covered the material or whatever it is. But if you come in there being as thoroughly prepared to discuss the grade, the chances are you'll avoid a lot of the common mistake. Oh, I didn't see that. And so that you aren't from a position of not being able to ever negotiate. Number 13 on this is use tactics that suit you and understand tactics used by others. In this class, we actually will be watching a movie called The Negotiator. And in that movie, I give a whole listing. I believe there's like a little over 35 tactics that might suit you as you try to negotiate with others. One of the tactics that Hollywood did in this movie, and it's an older movie, I hope you guys like it, that helps people understand positions by which to negotiate. In the movie, it's with Samuel L. Jackson in it, and one of the characters that he's talking to is a character by the name of Farley, and this character, Samuel L. Jackson, asks him a question, and the character says, "No, you can't have that." He said, in the world of negotiating, you never say no. What you say is, "Let me look into that." So that's a tactic that they used in the movie. Like I said, a tactic earlier that I like to use is, especially in salary negotiation, I always like to say, "Well, I noticed that your salary range was between 40 and 50, and my goal was I'd like to meet you halfway. I think we can sign this deal and I can become an employee of yours if we meet my salary goal of 45,000. They don't lose face, you don't lose face, and you walk away thinking, if had I not asked for it, or meet me halfway tactic, you wouldn't have gotten the $5,000. Know when to walk away. Believe it or not, this is a tough one. People, after they've spent time in negotiations, it's like they don't want to walk away. And what does it mean? If a party will not budge, let's say you have to have a minimum of $45,000 to live off of when you leave college and you start your new job. And the truth is, you have to know gee, I'm really sorry, and you have to walk away and say, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I've really enjoyed the negotiations in this whole interviewing procedure, but I really need to have X amount of dollars by which to live within my budget. Maybe this might be the time that we call in maybe a manager, an additional manager, or a HR executive. That would be the help with third party. And then, of course, know how to evaluate your performance and target your improvements. For me, it's learning to keep quiet. Every time that I try to improve in negotiations, it's just to be quiet and let the party think about it. Evaluating my performance, well, if my goal was to get $45,000 and I met that, then I really did, I would evaluate my performance as successful. I still might want more improvements in my interviewing and salary negotiation, but these are some of the negotiation strategies that we will be addressing throughout this time that we're together this summer. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the guided notes. You are able to pull those guided notes, the blank sheets, so that you can write into them directly from Blackboard under the category of guided notes. Thank you so much, and looking forward to our next guided note section.